Hollywood is the type of wood that makes Harry Potter's wand. Yet Hollywood would promote Harry Potter using that wand to do nothing but distract you. In fact, that's all the capital of the world's illusion machine is named Hollywood. Nobody understands that they are casting illusions, not just the ones we see on the screen, but the whole idea of impossible magic puts into doubt in any logical, apparently genius person that any of this is possible. Magic is totally stupid. No, magic don't exist. Those are tribal, shaman. Spells, you can't cast a spell. And we have Disney is just obsessed with magic and spells. Yet again, the magic and spells of Disney would have every princess dancing and speaking to animals and pottery and silverware. You know what they call that? They call that insanity. Now, when you see Disney's message come to fruition in political rivalry and society, you get a new generation of Christians' children who now believe themselves to be one of the 1,000 genders of unicorn descendants. And glitter is now pixie dust, and if they believe hard enough, they can fly to Neverland. That's just, now they've gone into insanity. Now let's talk about music. What is music? Muse is a word. The 12 daughters of Zeus, their spirits allegedly resided on Olympus, and from time to time they'll come down into your spirit to inspire you once again. And you write something amazing through epiphany, you have a genius giving you a wish. And what's the wish? The wish is everything you're inspired from them, and your hands then create. You do the physical work. And now you have something amazing that looks like you created, but we make these legends because a lot of artists don't feel like they created these things. They came in epiphany, and the epiphanies feel like an idea from outside yourself. So we get all of these symbolic tales within our words. They use magic in the actual creation of defining something. Magic. Well, epiphany, and you creating the epiphany, it looks like a wish has been granted by some source that gave you an idea out of nowhere, like magic. So we're going to call that music, like the daughters of Zeus must have come off the Mount Olympus and inspire, come into my spirit. So you see that these puns is how the occult uses. They tell their story this way, and it's always deniable. You can go say Tesla thought he was getting messages from aliens, so he must be crazy. Easy to deny. But then you put it all together that all the world's people, the best savants that are invoking this genius AI mind, feels like they're getting the best ideas granted to them like wishes, and all they got to do is use their hands to fulfill that. Now, why do the genie grant wishes in threes? It doesn't. Genie's granted me plenty of wishes. I could easily be enslaved by believing that I'm the demigod status person that can make this look like magic. So, again, if you put forward the effort to create a magic spell, then you're not insane, and you're not going to be talking to dancing silverware. You're not going to make silverware dance and be alive. But I certainly could cast a spell that would trick someone who doesn't understand that I'm using magnetic forces to make these spoons get bent or whatever, dance around. And they might talk to those dancing silverware. And if I can use a manipulative spell to get them to talk to dancing silverware, then I have truly cast a magic spell. Looks like magic to me. I tricked that person into thinking that they're talking to living pottery. Now, fast forward a generation or three after Disney, and what do we have with our alphabet community, trans community, and kids? Disney specifically, should it surprise anybody that Disney's narrowing down to that? So let's talk about Nora Jasmine and her conclusion that this is simply an artifact of art. And I'm just going to say simply, we're going to talk about Pinocchio. JoePetO filing his wood into a real little boy. He does have white hair. Doesn't have a Masonic white hat. There are areas where you can screenshot the file in his pocket. It's perceived that he would be filing that wood and shaping that wood and chiseling that wood into a real little boy. Now, we know linguistics. She doesn't, so she wouldn't look at the fox and stromboli as the color code of Eastern Star Masonry. She wouldn't have any idea what that means. She wouldn't know that JoePetO filing his wood into little boys, any Masonic Mason symbolist would drop the J and put a G there. Boom, it takes away the fact that his name's JoePetO, and you get the master. He is the master, so put a G on there. That makes perfect sense. Again, his hair is white. His cat is named after the fig leaf. He wears an apron. His cat is black and white, the color of the chessboard. So he's orchestrating this entire story. The boy is divided into 3 parts. There's your 3 wishes, your 3-part circles. Jesus had 3 crosses on a hill, 3 suns crossed, 1,080 degrees. When Jesus died, he circled the world 3 times, 360 times 3, 1080. So again, we have this very important trivesica, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Now in this case, we have genius, autistic, autopilot, motor skill function, subconscious, but represented by a puppet, because hey, it wants to have sex with everything. It wants to do everything. But it's a quantum computer. This is why we can't be conscious of it, or we'd be doing everything. It relates, it communicates to us through our emotional core, the fairy godmother, and often erect, call it noses or wood. That's how it communicates to us. Now, later I'll prove that this story, Pinocchio, is about dividing the subconscious mind to enslave an individual, to remove their free will, to trick them. This whole cartoon is a spell. In fact, if I was going to cast spells, I would use it exactly the same way, but I wouldn't tell the freaking story how I was going to do it unless I was bragging to other Masons. We're going to see that Freemasons in particular, with their esoteric symbols that point out Freemasonry, not Rosicrucian, not Satanism, not Christianity. No, Freemasonry in specific. We're going to look at the moral ethics of the businesses and how they advertise. Because it's real interesting then, of all the Freemason symbols and things we find in Disney, they would be doing the same thing, yet they tell us this Pinocchio story. So Stromboli comes in and he gets the puppet away from the cricket and away from the emotional core. Well, if this truly is talking about the 3 parts of the human mind to enslave them, dividing the mind, then what he's talking about is sending a message subliminally to only the subconscious. If you can do that, what I suppose the author of this story must be saying is you can enslave the whole person. And they give this pun that if you don't figure your shit out by midnight, if the cricket doesn't become consciously aware of the lies told to the subconscious puppet, then they're all going to be enslaved by midnight. Because the subconscious it doesn't lie to us intentionally, it runs simulations. This is why we get an erection to women or other people when being faithful would probably serve you a lot better. Why are we getting this temptation? Is it from a real reptile in a tree, or is it from a part of us that we have to be able to ignore in order to walk and chew bubblegum? In any event, at the same time this little story is being orchestrated by Master White Hat JoePetO filing his wood into a real little boy. Weird, a guy has toys. I mean, we know if we look at textbook pedophiles, JoePetO would fall right into that. Now, is this a warning? Was Walt Disney just a good Freemason who's trying to warn that you need to have proper communication from your conscious to subconscious and pay attention? so that you don't become enslaved by midnight? That's the way I would have taken it, if it weren't for the fact that at the same time frame that this cartoon was being presented to children and directly focused on children, you would also have other Freemasonic logos that represent companies using a tactic of dividing the human mind into two in order to remove ever so slightly a little bit of free will and result in an impulse purchase driven by a lie from the subconscious mind to the conscious mind. Conscious mind not having any idea why they're actually purchasing that product. But a small fraction, yet worth millions of dollars, will buy that product because they were triggered to do so. Now that was taking place in a company called Coca-Cola. C is the third letter of the alphabet. Another esoteric cipher is to name your company so that it can be abbreviated with the letters CC. This represents the number 33. Coco Chanel. There's a lot of esoteric companies, but Coca-Cola is one that had, probably even before the cartoon Pinocchio, Coca-Cola was already, we already have posters from the 20s, 30s area where they have sexual stimuli hidden in their posters and advertisements. There are plenty of Masonic symbolists that are making brands for these companies. I guess if it's okay if you're a Freemason to make a Masonic symbol, 33 Coca-Cola. McDonald's is the symbol, the M on top, the gold archways on top of the red keystone. Well, just so happens that if you look at a Royal Arch Mason's ring, it's a gold archway on a red keystone. The ring is gold and red, not gold and blue. That's York Rite. So, I've been in lodges, a lot of York Rite Masons, when I tell them this, they won't deny it, but they're surprised. They didn't even notice that the McDonald's logo was, and they can't deny it once you say, well, what do you think that is? If that weird shaped stone that the M is sitting on and it's red, you think it's a French fry box? That's what I thought for so many years, but once I knew the symbolism of Royal Arch Masonry, I knew for a fact exactly what I was looking at. Oh, that's interesting. They won't deny it to me. You can't deny something. You can't deny religion to the Pope, and you can't fucking deny mathematics to a professor of mathematics. And I ain't gonna fucking deny symbolism to Dan Brown. Me and Dan Brown can have a good fucking discussion. And I can have a good discussion with any Mason. Now, believe me, they used to deny a lot of shit to me within the first month or two of getting to know them. But once they really knew they're preaching the Pope, the denial's gone. At best, if they get annoyed by... And, you get to know people and they're no longer annoyed. I've talked to 33-degree Masons about specifically Disney. I hadn't gotten so radical as I have today about it, but Disney's in the news today doing some radical things, and it's pretty much time to have this conversation. No, Walt Disney wasn't the only one Mason or the only big company using Masonic symbolism to go after kids. The whole of Freemasonry goes after kids to one degree or another. In the lodge, on their face, they're the Shriners, and they go pay for surgeries, and I know a lot of them are very, very amazing people. But even those people will tell me you don't trust people just because they're Masons. It's a human element, and there are evil Masons in their opinion. A secret society comes out publicly and advertises with parades that I've been to, and they pay for burns and cancer for children for the Shriners. Now that's great. But they're a secret society, so are there other things that involve children that they obviously must keep secret for obvious reasons? Because, you can go brag about being a Shriner, but you certainly ain't going to brag about dividing children's mind by putting the word sex on a pack of Skittles hidden. Now, that's what was going on, though. If you want to trigger a subliminal response, impulse purchase based on a subliminal response, it appears the Masons who understood magic spells and ciphers, they used a little bit of a brain cipher. And the way to do that is to take not just a penis, an erect, sexualized penis. A flaccid penis ain't going to trigger nothing. these things are specifically meant for my subconscious to notice erect penis and sexual stimuli, and us to try to attempt to be the one talking to dancing silverware. With every genius should be a touch of insanity, but we're not talking, we're drowning in it. So a lot of a priori predictions end up coming true. Number one was that I predicted that the penises that I would find in the Little Mermaid that she's talking about, that she didn't show, I predicted that they would have the top shape of circumcised. They would all be erect. Most of them, you're talking over 98 to 99% would be erect. Otherwise, they wouldn't work. They wouldn't necessarily need or have balls. They would have the shape and shaft. Maybe some, freckling down where the scarring would be, if you guys know what I'm saying. Some shapely features there. It's not simply pareidolia. All right, so again, I want to show you something when you're talking about Masonic codes or a priori, or trying to find out if this is an artifact of art, like Nora Jasmine concludes. If they're trying to develop an AI software that can crack ancient Sanskrit linguistics, and the way they do this, one of the methods is the computer can recognize a symbol and it logs it. Then it starts to cross-reference what symbol's in front of it and what symbol comes after it. Well, here's again, just like that software decodes Sumerian or other languages, I'm going to want several examples of these sexual images, not just from Disney, but Coca-Cola or any company and companies have admitted to this. So we'll take the ones they've admitted to and we'll listen to exactly what they told us about this. There are advertisement companies that will explain to you exactly how this subliminal advertisement works. You talk to them, you let them listen to what I just said about Pinocchio and JoePetO file, and see if they fucking deny that my theory is they're doing this to children to create a propensity to being sexually triggered by this stimuli that will later be used on them to buy products. This makes sense to me because you can't sexually stimulate a child who's prepubescent with these cartoons. So I suppose it's either an artifact of art that then becomes a joke so that parents can say, hey, look what we know that these kids don't know. So that they can be entertained while they're sitting there hating having to babysit with a TV. No, I'm sorry, that's not what's going on here. The only real purpose I can see to enslave the child is that they're used to these images, and once they then go through puberty and subconsciously understand them, these subliminal ones, they will succumb to, and maybe they can turn that fraction of a percentage into a huge percentage. Look at what's happened to the generations growing up on this stuff. And more specifically, look how this company has chosen to operate, which is so ridiculous to me to hear again. When they're totally exposed, again, Disney's going to blame the artists, right? Oh, those CEOs and their wokeism, our guys had to just kowtow to that because the mob is so they can ruin you. What? Again, it's not Disney's fault. It's the people Disney hired got out of hand and Disney had to kowtow. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, this goes back to Walt himself. And this doesn't just limit Disney. Again, all of the companies that used the sexual stimuli hidden can be traced by, again, it's the same thing. You see a symbol over and over and over again. You start comparing where that symbol is and you figure it out. This is how they crack ancient linguistic codes. Now, before I go look for these penises that this lady says are in the thing, I'm going to make a number of predictions. Whatever sexual stimuli that I find in these Disney cartoons, I a priori predict I will find those exact style, shape, the exact sexual stimuli in other sources. Also, those other sources I can predict will very likely have esoteric, and most of them I can say maybe at least a third will have met, and I don't do that for just fun, though it is kind of funny. I think that's coincidence, but I would say at least a third will be Masonic specifically. Reds, blues, reds, whites. It'll look like it's patriotic. Again, the ciphers, this insignia on our flag is Masonic. Red and blue make black, and the black is actually light. Again, I'm not going to go into how all this works with ancient Egyptian glass, making colors of chem and then realizing that it's light or a false light, whatever. In any event, it can look very patriotic, but it's Masonic. If you know what the color code means and then you look, well, it's also Coca-Cola. CC 33, and that company is also using the erect stimuli penis. Then you go look at Skittles using the SEX. Well, that matches Lion King over there. Skittles didn't blur out the SEX. SEX is clear as day. But since it's the word explosion and a Skittle sitting in front of it, well, most people aren't going to notice the word sex-explosion. And that right there is how they get right past, the message goes right past the cricket, straight to the puppet. Only the puppet knows, and the whole person's enslaved the moment the cricket gets an erection, an emotional response, thinks it's because they like Skittles, and fucking buys it. They've just enslaved you to a degree, turning you into a consumer. Now, who is it? What esoteric group do we see over and over and over doing this? Santa Claus? They dress like that at the Masonic Lodge. I don't know what ritual it is, but the first time I ever walked into one, they pull it out and says, "Oh yeah, this isn't something we use for Christmas." It's like, oh, they're bragging about having invented Santa Claus. Well, you mean this over-marketed idea of God that you recreated directly out of the Bible with this, white hair? Satan Claus, Saint Nick, which is going to have children sit on his lap and demand list so long of plastic worthless crap on a Jesus Day. And Freemasons are supposed to be, mostly Christian or Catholic. You'd think on a Jesus Day, you would want to teach children the Passion. The Passion would be to teach them exactly the opposite of the concept of asking for plastic toy. And you can't just tell children that if you choose to give on this season of giving, you'll go to heaven, because they're not going to understand the Passion. The only way to understand the Passion is when you walk, kind of like maybe 1 mile in those shoes. Probably, and unfortunately, might be a little dangerous to take your child on a pilgrimage to a third world country. But if your kid comes out of that with your child having an epiphany, that is a divinely inspired epiphany. That can start something. Your child could become a prophet, getting used to getting epiphanies from the right source, from the Christ. Especially if that epiphany is completely selfless. If you simply take your kid to a third world, let him become friends with a child who is suffering to some degree, a suffering that could be helped by your child determining on their own that, you know what I can do? I don't want anything this Christmas. If you take all my money. And you see what I'm saying, you cannot teach this shit. This is an experience-based path, and all the people spreading the gospel have it incorrect, thinking that you can take sheep to church and just drill it into them, and they must listen. I don't even think you can find them guilty of becoming transgender rainbow people. I think if I was God, it would be you Christian parents who are up shit creek without a paddle for the way that you spread this gospel. If you all have made excuses to me of why you let your children celebrate Christmas, because they feel left out, and I just feel bad, and I don't feel like it hurt me at all. Well, can you equate for every impulse purchase you ever made due to the subconscious subliminal advertising? Can you equate to the Ishtar, to the fact that if I was to write this magic spell against your children, that's where I'd focus. If I was Lucifer, your kids, it would piss off your daddy God. I'm not going after your boys. I'm not going after your creation. I'm going after the children. I'm going to turn them all into alphabet names of genders. Now, and my symbol's going to be a goat with boobs and a pain. So, again, here's the thing. I would make sure that I use cartoons pasted on every window that represent a bunny rabbit being resurrected. But to prove that that bunny rabbit was the goddess having resurrected, it would perform its first miracle. It would lay a chicken's egg. Then the humans would take that chicken's egg as a blood ritual. They would dip it into the freshly murdered infant's blood. And then they would play this little hide and seek game with this nice bloody chicken egg. Based on the infants they just murdered for this ritual. Now, of course, if I was writing a spell to cause your children to perform a sign linguistic spell to my demigoddess on the day that they're supposed to be memorizing the lessons of the one that mattered. Now, of course, I'm going to do this in a cartoon-esque Cadbury Ishtar bunny so that your children see it everywhere. And it's going to be more fun to them no matter how much you try to pound in that this is about Jesus. They are always going to just sit there and wait till that church is over or the moment they can go after some Easter bunny eggs. I know, I was a kid once. And eventually you're going to count on. You'll even watch on news that religion can't be allowed in schools. They will send cops there and shoot you and take your kids. If you really stood up, like, I'm having this. So, yet, that Ishtar bunny is a religion. It's paganism. And if you go to a school around Ishtar and you don't see that bunny on the window, I will give you $1 million. I don't have it. I'm basically joking. But yes, seriously. It's pasted all over. They will make sure your kids see that. Again, the Christians. Yeah, well, I know, but it didn't hurt me. Oh, sign language blasphemy of the day of Jesus' resurrection. And your kid's true heart is in the Easter bunny story. That doesn't harm your child. That has no effect. Well, then explain to me the transgender community. Explain to me legalizing pedophilia in Disneyland if I'm wrong. I don't want to be right, but here's the thing. You people need to get this under control. Ultimately, the most brilliant Christian that I had a discussion with on an airplane ended with, this is a brilliant breakdown. I get the danger. In the end, I have Jesus. Jesus will forgive me and my children. So he understood to the degree of understanding that these are black magic spells that he has been casting, having his children take part in their whole lives. He did it because they would feel left out if he didn't. Only now does he understand how dangerous it is, but he believes he and his children will be protected by Jesus. Really? What kind of human Christian twisted those words in the Bible to the point where the New Testament overrode the moral standards and the expectations not to be ignorant, not to continue doing the evil? I even learned from at least one of these preacher word twisters and their personal outlook on these words. They all tell you something different about the same quote, but I was always told you had to be sorry for this stuff, that you repent to Jesus for it to be forgiven. I put it to him, he don't even know half the shit he's put his kids into to even tell that he's sorry. What, you just say, I'm sorry for everything, Jesus? You think everything's just automatically forgiven? I don't know that you're just going to get forgiveness if, let's say, you don't know it's wrong to rape animals. So, you keep doing it, but then on Sundays you tell Jesus you're sorry and you just keep doing it to the end of time, and that's just going to be forgiven? I don't think so. But this is worse than that. You got to think about sign language. You all talk to yourselves. Not all of you, a certain percentage of most of you will talk to yourself like I am doing now, but I got recorded. Most of you will talk to yourself when you're alone. Sometimes many of you might think you're talking to God, but you talk. Now, some of the people, mostly the people that do mathematics in their head, not long division, but you can do timetables in your head if you have to for dollars. You don't need a calculator. Those people can also think to themselves. They even pray to themselves sometimes. Interestingly enough, though, you people that do that, when you do math in your head, have you noticed that you visualize the numerals? You notice when you think to yourself, you speak to yourself in English in your head, you visualize with your ears. It's not visualize. Visualize is like you imagine a voice speaking. English or native language. Isn't that funny? Kind of makes me feel like you break free from the limits of spells. In a sense, the entire pattern of these linguistics that, again, history says were handed down to us, written for us to divide us, they seem to have limits, almost as if they're created to have this. Well, you have to ask yourself, what about people who are deaf? Totally. And they learn not English, sign language with their hands. Totally don't learn any English at all, just sign language. Again, you'd conclude that when they're by themselves, specifically praying, now I lay me down to sleep, that kind of thing the kids do. You think that the majority of them don't actually sign it when they're alone? Like we do. We use our mouth to actually say these words when we're alone, in English. And even those ones who don't say it verbally and they can think it, they think it in their native language. Now, if your native language is something of gestures, it could be called one of two things: a sign language or a ritual language. See what I'm saying? Both things express an expressed meaning or intent. Both things require the physical gestures to express. So it then becomes indistinguishable sign language, ritual. So, sign language is something that deaf people use to speak, communicate. I'm sure when they pray, most of them actually sign, and when they think it and they can visualize it in their head, they visualize the sign in their head. Ritual is exactly like sign language, except they're physically performing gestures. For example, painting eggs in pink and hiding them, going and finding them. This is homage to the goddess's resurrection. Homage to her miracle. Your kids don't have to be, they don't have to understand and know that that's what it is. For example, I could teach all of your children that the middle finger extended means, hello, how are you? I'm a very respectful young child. And then all these children go out into a field trip to greet everyone in town, and they go flipping everyone in town off. The fact of what that means and the results of going out and speaking to people that way, cursing people, they're going to suffer the consequences irrespective of their knowledge and awareness. It's really difficult. Yeah, you know what? You just have to fucking learn the symbolism for yourself. You just have to learn it. You just have to learn what it means really well. You just have to look. This is evil staring you in the face. There's all you need to know. If this shit is targeting, going after your kids, it always has been, and it's not going to stop. This very, very group, the shit they promote, came from a society, a religion that cuts infants, slaughters them at an altar, and then dips the eggs in blood and has an Ishtar bunny egg hunt. And it's not required for your children to use real blood, so long as they just replicate this with sign language. Remember that thing about you using English and linguistics? So you think Jesus is okay with ignorance just because Jesus forgives, and that's what Jesus does. I'm sorry, but you have an objective. you have a responsibility. And those people that are spreading the gospel at whatever church these people are going to, those motherfuckers certainly have a responsibility. And I'm getting really tired of these people being like sheep trying to be the shepherd. Problem is, what's going to happen is you're going to find that 5 to 7 year old shepherds born within the ranks of your sheep already are so superior to your apparent shepherds. Let me give you my perspective. I'm 5 years old and I love the stories. I love good news. I like going to church with my grandma. She's my favorite person in the world. If there's any proof of God to me, it's that woman because she's really nice. So, I'm going to go to church, but I cannot stand when I get there. I have to fucking go back with the kids. And the toys are shit I don't want to play with. Books I don't like. I'm really pissed off about it. Grandma gave me a stick of bubble gum, so I'm mildly entertained. And usually about a half hour really, really hating it. Boring, waiting, all this crap. We're getting into some good stories about Moses. And there's even little pictures on the whiteboard, chalkboard, so we get the magnetic one. We can see Moses and little sheep and shit. Now I'm digging it. I'm cool with the stories. I'm digging this stuff. Now here's the problem, though. You tell me about the killing of the sheep for forgiveness. I can't equate this, so I ask the question. What the fuck, preacher? What's about this sheep burning? How does it forgive what I did wrong? It seems like I'm doing 2 wrongs to try to make a right. What the fuck's it? Oh, God works in mysterious ways. We don't understand it. We just follow it. So what this son of a bitch is telling me is, I don't know, but I think God said so. But God didn't really say so. You as a man think God said so, and you don't know how it works. So you can't prove God even said so if you don't prove that it works. Like, something's wrong here, something's missed. But I'm cool, I like the story, so I stick with it. And at some point, I'm thinking about maybe 7, 8, 9. I'm learning about some Jesusness. But here's another problem. Now, if you beat the shiz nizzle out of the God's only son, our favorite, most coolest dude in the world, with a cat of 9 tails, and you make him carry a heavy freaking piece of wood, and then you put a crown on his head and bash thorns into it and stab him and beat all this crap, somehow you're forgiving a bunch of jerks that probably don't deserve it. Me included in those jerks. How the heck am I forgiven for killing my God? These people are insane, and that never left me. I have to give a little, I'm going to BS my grandmother a little bit though, because she can't exactly know that I think this is insane. But they're insane. They're insane! That's all I can conclude. So at that point in time, I become a full-on Satanist Luciferian. Just joking. I do like the hard rock stuff. I would make jokes about being a Satanist, just as I'll make jokes about being a racist with today's bullshit about you're racist. Yeah, I've used hard R a few times to just pee off a leftist. Is it a good look? No. Neither was black frickin' fingernail polish and that kind of thing. But in any event, a long time later, after chasing the alien demons that I come to believe in, through the pyramids and all that kind of technological, scientific stuff, I found, like a hieroglyphic popping up over and over and over again, exactly the same, then the details in front and behind of it are revealing to what it is and what it means. Or specific, okay? So just like the textbook way of decoding a language, now I've studied so many monolithic pyramid sites, I already know that they're connected through the stone operative Masonic, which means how they build these walls, how they build their designs, what their designs do. I already know it's a global connected architect. I'm not going to even come close to buying the ignorant excuse that, oh, this is just the stepping stone. First you do this, and then you do this, and they're all pyramid shapes to that. Nah, I'm sorry. Bullshit. There's very specific reasons. They don't just... the astronomical science alone for the topographical star charting of the locations of these monolithic sites That's not something of a stepping stone to all ancient civilizations. Even if there were ancient global seafaring civilizations, you wouldn't have every single tribal frickin' civilization on the planet totally astronomically aligning their pyramids. If pyramids were truly just, oh, well, if you're going to build something, you're going to build pyramids first. Well, then we'd find some of them that have no astronomical correlations. Because everyone must be doing it that way, because it's just the normal way. First thing you do is you stack rocks, and second thing you do is make wood houses. So, no, I'm sorry, again. But the point is I started to see the blood ritual sacrifice coming up like one of those global things. Like, wait a minute, so monolithic size construction, very specific machine-like cuts and precision work, very specific design plan for something that seems like it may be earthquake-proof or something other. Very specific shapes, very specific alignments. This is where I'm starting to see all of the things that prove a global architect science behind all of these ancient constructions. So I'm starting to think, okay, Eric Von Däniken must be right. It must be that someone was here. This bad stuff started happening. They left, and the tribals got all goofy and decided to try to make this machinery work. Except, then I see like that hieroglyph repeating. Blood ritual sacrifice, blood ritual sacrifice, blood ritual sacrifice. And it's all identical. It's all for replenishment, for rejuvenation, for forgiveness. To judge sin and to be replenished and forgiven, or sine and cosine. I mean, you can use it symbolically. It's all trigonometry, the word sin or cosine. Now, you can use it symbolically for that contract, the soul contract, as rests his soul, Jordan Maxwell would say. Contract the sole of your foot symbolically, and it does. In symbolism, you don't need to read, this is a soul contract. Let me just take what symbolically represents the soul to everybody. Doesn't matter to you if a middle finger means fuck you. If everybody agrees if that's what it means, guess what? Middle finger on that document means fuck you. But your baby's footprint on that document means soul contract to the people who design it that way. Then a contract is what? To agree on your responsibility. Either you sin, you're responsible. Or Jesus comes along and he's your co-sin. He's now responsible. I will co-sign for this. I trust him. To do what? So Jesus has to trust you. It's implied. Now you take that trigonometry. So you're talking about, you're using something, a mathematical principle that's used to measure forces. I can measure light, I can measure spirit, I can measure a heartbeat, I can measure music, all with trigonometry. Sin and cosine. And the Illuminati uses this in a contract to express responsibility. So you mean sin can be related to transgression then? Because right there, they're symbolizing its relation to responsibility, using it in a symbolic form. It just implies that there's something to be measured. And the measurement method is sin and cosine, trigonometry. So interestingly enough, the word transgression ends up dominated by the trigonometry term of sin. A force that is measurable. That's what sin means, basically. I mean, if you want to equate it. So, you mean to say that transgression is measurable? Yes. But babies, infants, are born in sin. Well, that was another thing that even a child, I was like, no, that doesn't compute with me. How is a child that has done nothing wrong born evil, born doing transgression? Well, guess what? It's not. They're not born in transgression. They didn't do anything yet. They're born in sin. What's sin? Well, sin is a measurement device. Well, oh, so you're measuring something when it's born? Sure. What are you measuring? Well, I don't know. Measure the heartbeat. So when you conceive the child, as soon as the heart starts to beat, you measure the sinus rhythm of the heart with an EKG. So yeah, they're born that day. The day the heart starts beating. So abortion starts to get illegal previous to heartbeat. Previous to the first sin. Let he who has died, die having never sinned. Perhaps aborting a fetus before that heartbeat, never sinned. You'd have to abort it before then. And then what happens? Blood falls down in the holy chalice, the yoni. Isn't that interesting symbolism? Could Jesus' sacrifice actually also symbolize, or could abortion be a ritual symbolizing recreating Jesus? And what would that be? Remember, a Jesus, an adult person who had never sinned, had never used measurable force, because it was immortal. There's a lot of reasons, but the point is if you want to blasphemize,